Well, Elizabeth, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Tell us, how is Sujit?
Great. He's really moving ahead. Started school already.
Yeah.
And that's a big move because he's now in with other children, and he's not speaking yet, but he's certainly got a lot of receptive language and trying to speak. And he identifies with me as his mum, and he knows who's boss around the place. He plays up as if I'm mum. So yeah, big move in the last 3 years. A big move forward.
How much of that, the playing up, how much of that is human understanding and how much of that is
Well, I think it's
other?
socialised behaviour. I mean, if you look at a little 2 or 3 year old, they know who their mother is and they know how to play up on their mother, and he's just the same. He's a toddler man. I call him a toddler man because that's what he is.
How old is he?
Well, he's 33 now, but coming on 3 or 4. And in terms of his development, I never say that he is retarded in any way, except he's environmentally retarded. So his environment has caused the problems. There's no congenital problem with him, and we've had that all checked out and so on. So he's got the ability to learn, and he's learning the good things with the bad things. He's learning how to shove the other boys around, and he knows his strength and things like that. So.
Is there hope that in the future he will take his place in human society fully?
Hard to know. Another couple of years and we'll be able to tell. He's pretty well toilet trained now, and he knows how to clean his teeth, but with help and so on. So he knows the general routine that humans go through. And so that's great. And I think most of all the well of love that he's got for people around him is showing up, and I like that.
What was your reaction when you first saw him?
Well, it's indented in my mind that when I first saw him, I mean, he has faeces all over his face. He was eating it, he was throwing it around, he was aggressive, wild. I couldn't touch him. When I did first touch him, he was grabbing me and biting and scratching and so on. So you never forget that type of memory. He could hardly walk. He couldn't walk up steps. When you go back, and we were just looking at pictures last night of when I first started working with him, and he was like an animal. Yeah, he looked like an animal. Yeah,
and behaved like an animal.
Yeah,
that's all he knew.
Yeah.
You were a Christian at that time.
Yes.
What did you say to God when you saw him?
Well, I knew that God had put him in my path. I knew instantly that this boy was part of my future. Yeah. And that it was God's plan, not just for Sunjit but for me. And when you're taking a walk with God, as I have chosen to do, when you lay your life down, as it says, you take what comes. And if I had my choice, I'd be sitting before my computer writing and doing all those fancy things that people think they'd like to do when they, especially when they've been a convert, as I was, to talk about your life before and a life after and so on. But no, I had this man put before me, and it followed from there.
Because, I mean, your training was in that area, wasn't it?
It was in behavioural science, and I never thought I'd ever use it because I was a teacher in behavioural science, and then I became an industrialist making furniture, and now I was presented with someone where the skills became very obvious that behaviour modification was the order of the day.
The feral, what do they call it? It's the
feral child. He's a feral child, yes.
That was obviously part of the training, though.
Yes, part of my training. Yeah. And as soon as I heard, someone said to me, "Oh, there's a chicken boy here," and someone raised with chickens, I just thought, "Oh my goodness," and all the learning that I'd done and the teaching that I'd done came back to me. Was
there any inkling when you were doing the feral child part of your training? Was there anything that goes, "Gosh, this is strangely more interesting than the rest of it," or this is significant?
Yes, it was, because I knew about all the feral children in the world, and I knew about Victor, who was a famous feral child. He was in France, and he came out of the woods, and that was exactly 200 years ago.
Is that right? Yeah.
Exactly 200 years ago. So, and I'd read the book, The Forbidden Experiment, and that was a book that almost paralleled the experience that I'm having with Sunjit. Yeah.
So most of us are familiar with Mowgli, and he's quite human.
Yes,
You know?
yes, that's
So we
exactly
have
right.
no
yes.
idea.
And Jeannie in the United States, she was a more recent one, found in 1973. But Sunjit's the most recent of the feral children that's been found and put into therapy. So a lot of people are interested in him from an academic point of view.
Is there a spiritual side of what you do with Sujit?
Definitely, absolutely. I think I saw the glory of God for the first time when I was dealing with Sunjit.
Now that's very strange. You know,
Yes,
I'm
yes.
dealing with a boy that's been caged up with chickens,
Yes.
and I see the glory of God. That
Yeah,
doesn't
amen.
make sense.
You know, I just did, and it was actually when I was toilet training him, and I would be toilet training him for hours and hours at an end. You know, waiting for him to do something and then reinforcing it. And I actually had, you know, I really had got a glimpse of God's glory then, because you need the grace over your life, and you need stacks of grace because. Well, it's not glamorous, toilet training a 33-year-old. And so I had to do that. And that's when God really touched me. And because it was in a secret place, people didn't know that I was doing that. And I would do it hour after hour, and day after day, and week after week, and so on. And I would pray. Of course I would pray because I needed God's grace over my life, and because you needed patience and tolerance, and I didn't have much of those. I'm not proud to say, but I didn't have much of those elements in me, in my character. But when God showed me his glory and showed me that he was using me, and this was before Sunjit's story was out and about and so on, so I had no idea that this would happen, but it was really serving God in a secret place.
How has it changed your understanding of who God is?
Tremendously, because it became more personal. And I also understood that, you know, we weren't just to read about what Jesus was like, we had to be like him.
Yeah.
And Jesus, I believe Jesus must have done a lot in a secret place. I mean, we only read a little bit about him, but I just love the way that Jesus would go out and do things, and then he would go back into solitude and meditation and his relationship with God, and then he would go out again. And I think that's what I became. I wanted to do that, and it was that's when I was touched by the hand of God.
All right, Elizabeth, thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome. Thank you.